Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Mom Mode. On this episode, we have Shelby Cannon on the podcast, and Shelby is going to be telling her son Benny's story and just some stuff that they've endured during his first year of life. And it's just it's a miracle for one. And two, it is a really important message that we want to tell so that other parents are aware. So, Shelby, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm really excited that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm
Yeah, of
excited.
course. So let's start off with, can you just kind of introduce yourself and just a little bit about you and your family?
Yes. So my name is Shelby and I have three kiddos. I have a 5-year-old Charlie, a 3-year-old Clara, and then Benny is our only boy and he is 18 months now. And my husband is Travis. I own my own boutique and have for almost 9 years. And my husband is a plumber.
Oh, awesome. I love the trades.
I'm
My
under the
family
spectrum.
yeah, business owner. Um, how did you so you've owned your business for 9 years. How did you get into opening your own business?
So when I was in college, I used to work for the Buckle and I loved like sales and retail and fashion. But I actually went to school to be an elementary autism teacher. So I went to school for special ed. So out of college, I taught for a few years. And then my mom and I decided to open a boutique kind of for fun, connected to her hair salon. And it quickly just grew to the point that I ended up leaving my teaching job. Always say that I
Wow.
retired early in
Yeah.
age and did the boutique full time.
Wow.
And
Well, it
yeah,
probably felt like retirement because, like,
yeah,
I mean, not that you didn't love being a teacher, but like owning
right.
your own clothing boutique attached to your mom's hair salon sounds like a pretty awesome, like,
Yes.
day, like, to have.
It has been awesome.
That's really cool. And can you shop that boutique online or is it just like,
Yes, yeah.
um
So we have a website and we have an app in the App Store.
oh,
And
okay.
years ago, I actually rebranded the store because obviously when I started, I wasn't married, I didn't have kids, and my mom was more a part of it. And so we rebranded so that we could get my mom off of there so that it wouldn't continue to affect her for taxes.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and so we renamed the boutique Ray and Kay Boutique after my girls. So Charlie Ray and Clara Kay. So that's where
Oh,
we
that's
got the
so
Ray and Kay.
cute.
Yes. Yeah.
That's really cute. Okay, cool. So you can shop in
Uh,
store and you're located where?
so actually, I closed my storefront after
Okay.
this incident.
Okay.
And so I am operating online only from my house and we are
Okay.
free shipping 24/7. So
Oh,
our
awesome.
website is shoprayandk.com and it's RAE and then KAE.
Okay. ShopRayandK.com.
Yes.
Well, let's get into Benny's story. So, as you just mentioned, Benny's injury. So I'm going to have you just go ahead and tell us, what that day was like and what happened from obviously just your perspective of
Okay.
being his mom.
Yes. So, Benny was almost 5 months old. And I'm sure as a lot of moms out there know, finding childcare is not easy, especially for an infant. So I kept Benny up until 10 days prior to his incident, and was able to bring him to work with me. I was blessed by a family that was all very involved and was able to help support that. So sometimes my grandma would come over and hold him or help me feed him so that I could operate my store and do all the things I needed to do. Um, but as they get older, they start getting more mobile and it's hard to be mom and a business owner all in one stretch. So I was really trying to find childcare for all of my kids. The daycare that we previously went to was closing, and this daycare we knew the family. So we thought that it was going to be a great fit for us. And about 10 days in, I had a police officer walk into my business and whenever he walked in, I didn't know if like I had done something wrong or one of my employees did something wrong or what was happening,
Mhm.
but he stopped me, and I'll never forget every time I see this officer because we live in a really small community, um, I will never forget the way that he looked at me. And he told me that I needed to get to the hospital, that my baby had been rushed to the hospital. I'm like, no one from daycare had called me. Like, it was just like a punch to the gut. I'll never forget those feelings. And I'm like, where? Like, what hospital? Like, what happened? Like, no, nothing. And he's like, you just need to get in your car and you need to get to the hospital. And then he stopped me and said, actually, you don't need to drive. Do you have somebody that can drive you? And luckily, my mom's business is connected to mine. And so she grabbed her purse. I grabbed my purse. I was in clothes modeling for the store. So I had like tags hanging off the back of my clothes. And we ran to the car and he said, I'll blow the candles out and I'll lock the doors. And my mom threw him the keys to our business. And my mom had people under her hair dryer and everything that just had to leave. So the whole way to the hospital where I'm calling our daycare over and over and over again, and they aren't answering. And I have to call my husband and tell my husband, like, hey, you need to get to the hospital. Luckily, he was closer to the hospital than I was because my business is about 15 minutes from the hospital.
Mhm.
And whenever we got to the hospital, my husband got there a little bit before me. Um, at that time, the like doctors and people working on our son did not know that he was our child. Um, so luckily with our incident and being in a very small community, one of the police officers that heard the call come in, their child also went to our daycare and they knew that a 4-month-old, da 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 da, this description described our child. And so once he was able to, like, confirm that, um, officers were able to come and get me, but then in the dispatch and, like, everything from getting him situated, and they didn't care about his name, cared about his care. Uh,
Mhm.
they realized once we got there that it was our child. So he went into the hospital as John Doe. Once we got to the hospital, I'll never forget, there was a lady that was a nurse that was standing behind Benny, and she was handbagging him. And we walk in the room, and we're just trying to figure out what happened, and I kept asking, "What happened? What happened? Is he going to be okay?" Because at that point in time, he was purple,
Mhm.
and, they had, like, him, like, kind of wrapped in plastic, like, trying to, like, bring circulation back to his skin, and minutes after we were there, we could see kind of color coming back to him, so that was relieving to us, but I just kept thinking to myself, "What if she gets tired?"
Mhm.
And everyone kept asking her, like, "Do you need us to switch?" And I'm like, "No, you can't stop. Like, what if she stops for 1 second?" And, you know, the hospital that our hometown hospital didn't have a ventilator or intubation equipment small enough to intubate Benny. And they also didn't feel confident enough in intubating him with as little as he was because that's just not something that they do frequently. So they had to handbag him all the way until Lifelight got there. But they actually had to send a jet for us because all of the helicopters were out. So the jet had to fly to the airport, and then an ambulance had to pick up all the medics from the jet and bring them to the hospital. And then they got Benny all situated and on a ventilator. And then during that time, we were like trying to figure out if I was going to be able to go with him or my husband was going to be able to go with him on the jet. Since it was bigger, we were like really hopeful that we were both going to be able to ride with him
Mhm.
because the children's hospital is a little over 2 hours from our hometown. And they told us that I could fly with Benny, but they told my husband that he wasn't going to be able to fly. And at that point in time, I didn't think that I was going to physically be able to, like, handle going on the plane or going on the jet and something happening to Benny with me being by myself. Um,
Absolutely. I feel like I would feel the same way.
like I needed my husband. I needed somebody to be there for me.
Yeah.
We needed that support for one another. And a lot of the ER nurses and like paramedics and stuff that were still there um, came over and talked to us because they knew that like I broke down after that. And they said, no matter what happens on that jet ride, you cannot change anything. And they are not there to, be there for you. They're there to take care of Benny. There's might be things that you don't like that they do to save him or take care of him. And you just need to go with your husband and be with your husband. Um, and we felt so guilty for leaving him, but we also knew that we had to take care of each other. And like they had told us too, is that we wouldn't be able to make any changes. We wouldn't be able to do anything. We would kind of be in our seat. And they said it's really loud and warm in the area that I would have to be. And I wouldn't really be able to be right up beside him. Uh,
Mhm.
and so we did decide to do that. So since they had to take him by ambulance to the airport and then fly him by jet to the Kansas City airport and then take him by ambulance again to the children's hospital, by the time they told us you won't be able to go to the airport. You just need to get in your car and go to the hospital now. And so we got in our car. My father-in-law luckily drove my husband and I up there.
And
Um,
where were your daughters at this point?
so Actually, one of them was taken by police to the police station, and my brother was able to pick her up from there. And
Okay.
my oldest, thank the Lord, had just had an ear infection and a fever, and so she stayed with my grandma that day. So
Okay.
she was not there to see any of it. Thank goodness, because she is old enough that she remembers,
She would
like,
know.
moments from the hospital stay and everything like that still to this day that she talks about.
Mhm.
Our 3-year-old, obviously she just turned 3 in April, so it was a year ago she was 2, she was there. And there's things that we see in her that we know that she was definitely affected by. Um, but luckily, I think that there was a lot that she doesn't remember.
Yeah.
Um
Um, okay, so he's in the jet going or like making his way to Kansas City Airport. You and your husband go with your father-in-law. You start driving to the Children's Hospital in Kansas City.
Yes. So once we got to Kansas City, we, got in there, checked in and everything, and he was just getting all like situated on like the hospital vent settings and all of that before we could go back and see him. And the whole way up to Kansas City, we just kept trying to figure out, what happened. Like, was it a seizure? We still haven't heard from the daycare, but whenever we were in the hospital, there were tons of officers and like investigators that were there. And at that time, they were doing their like pre investigation stuff and weren't really worried about talking to us because that wasn't our priority. And they knew that. And we didn't really know what that entailed.
Mhm.
So once we kind of got situated, they started talking with us and informed us that the daycare was not licensed, and that neither of them were CPR certified.
Now, did they advertise that they were, or at least like the CPR certified?
So they had in their contract that they were CPR certified and they had like a Facebook page and were posting like we can take 2 kids over 18 months or that they had openings. And so we never asked if they were licensed. We just assumed. And how I always perceive this or say this to other people is when you go to get your hair done in a hair salon, you don't ask them to see their license. You just trust that they have their license and know what they're doing.
Yep.
They're on social media about the work that they're doing.
It's
And
so
so
true.
we didn't ask and they never said. We just assumed that they were because like per like law, they're supposed to be if they're watching so many kids. They're advertising
Mhm.
LLC daycare. We assumed that they were.
Yeah, I would
You know,
too.
and so we never questioned it any other way, and I guess they never specifically stated we are a licensed daycare, Um, and so then at that point, they were also over in care. So then everything became a investigation. So at once the police got to the home, like the girls were removed from the home and the children, and they were taken in for questioning. So that was one reason why they obviously weren't answering our phone calls.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
So they're working on Benny. Obviously, you don't know what happened. The focus is getting him stabilized.
hmm
Um, what was that like? How long did that take to stabilize him? And when did you guys understand the outcome of
Yeah.
what had
So
happened and how he was going to be moving forward?
I remember whenever he was in the initial the emergency room, his eyes weren't opened and, it was very new. He was very purple. Once we got to Kansas City and we got to go in and see him for the first time, and his eyes were opened at that time. And I'll never forget seeing his eyes and saying to my husband, he will never be the same again. Because I could tell in his eyes that he would never be the same.
Mhm.
And I didn't know at that time, like, what that was until, like, days later. Um, they just kept telling us that, like, Benny was really, really, really sick and that, he was deprived of oxygen for an extended period of time. And so over those first few days, it was mostly just, they were able to start cooling him because what's really important with a brain injury is that you don't want them to start spiking fevers or like their brain and everything to be misfiring. So trying to keep their body temperature really regulated is super important because it can help like regulate for seizures or different things like that. So luckily he did qualify for cooling, and some children do and some children don't. And I don't know what all that protocol is. So he was able to cool for the first 72 hours. And during that time period, he did present 3 seizures. So then that's whenever they started like implementing medication. And then we're like, well, is is this seizures? Is that what caused this? Like, and they want to do like MRIs and they do EEG and everything. And then like as more detectives start coming in and talking to us, and um everything starts to unfold in that first 72 hours, we realized that Benny, was placed in a bouncer seat and he was swaddled, although he was rolling over at almost 5 months of age, but he was not buckled. Um, and so he rolled over in the bouncer seat and ultimately suffocated from them not buckling him and leaving him unattended.
Okay. So for when you first said bouncer seat, I thought of like, like how they can stand and bounce. So it was like one of the rocking
Yeah, like you could
bouncy.
almost like put your foot on it and kind of
Yeah, and it
bounce with it.
bounces.
Mhm.
So he was swaddled and managed to like turn himself.
That is kind of the understanding that we have from everything.
I
He wasn't
mean,
buckled, he was swaddled in the seat, and those kind of bouncers, they only have a lap belt, so that it's not even
yeah.
a point harness. Uh,
No.
so, on those ones, it says, like, they're never supposed to be left unattended whatsoever because there's only a lap belt, like
Oh yeah, they can go
so it
forward. I mean, you don't know their strength.
right, and a kiddo that's rolling over really isn't that's not a good place for them to be.
No, unless you literally like I know my daughter was in it, but I'm standing right there. Like if I was like doing my makeup or changing and like for whatever reason I mean I really don't know how long I had her in that for, but you do not leave a baby unattended. I mean, first off, like
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
He was in a room where, like, there was, like, multiple empty beds around him, like, I don't know if maybe they were struggling to get him to sleep that day, or I don't know the circumstance, and I don't know that we ever will know
Yeah.
what actually, like,
Which is
persuaded.
so it's probably very frustrating as a parent. And
Y
there's probably I mean, I don't know, you can tell me, but I'm sure just, like, so many questions and just scenarios came to your mind.
yeah, so once we kind of found that out, it was really hard because initially there was so many things that were posted all over on social media about what people perceived happened and what people thought happened, with me owning a business and, like, being involved in our community, we had amazing support from our community, and that is, like, undeniable, like, the strength and faith that my husband and I had was from those people,
Mhm.
and, um, the things that people were saying, like, about, like, what they heard happen to our son were just, like, disgusting. I mean, it was horrible having to read that and, like, that is about my son. Like, people are thinking this is what happened with my son. And to think that about people that we truly cared about, that we thought were taking good care of our children, and
Yeah.
then thinking like, wow, like, who can we trust? Like having all of those types of thoughts were like really hard. And not only managing those thoughts and those feelings and those emotions on top of Benny and what was happening with Benny in those moments was so hard. Um, because we never thought that we would, that something like this would happen and that, it was, negligence. And
Yeah.
so for us, it was really hard navigating that. And then, as more time unfolded, there were drugs in the home and
And,
there
like, were they you questioned, were they using at the time to where they weren't
and
mentally in a
as part of
space?
the investigation, they had to, like, test a bunch of stuff and do DNA tests on Benny and different things, and it's like, my mom brain is like, "Do they think that, like, the kids were getting these drugs?" Or, your mind just goes all over the place. You never
Mhm.
know, and at this point, I have 0 trust in them, so my brain is just down the rabbit hole, um, and so it was definitely big news. And the other hard thing too is that in a small town, people want cool things. They think it's cool things to put on online and on news stations and newspaper.
Mhm.
And all of this stuff was our family that was being on the front page of the newspaper.
And you don't even realize that that was happening until, like, you would see it.
No, half the time we did not. And or they would like see our social media posts and take things from our posts when we would be posting updates and like update the community about it just because it was just
Oh
good
my
news.
gosh.
And so that was kind of a lot to take in too.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. I mean, because you somewhat want privacy as well, like, you need support, but you
yeah,
also you're working through this. I mean,
right.
and you're
Right.
not it's not just a period of time, like, your life is forever changed
Yeah, but I think at that
constantly.
moment, and so we kept, the investors kept calling us and like wanting updates and like, what are they saying is prognosis? And so that they could further their investigation with like actual charges.
Mhm.
And, on like 48 hours in, and he had had 2 seizures in that one day, and like his stats weren't good. And they did his MRI, and they came in and told us, that they didn't think that Benny was going to survive. And they
Wow.
told
And that
us,
was 48 hours after this all occurred.
uh-huh, that he was completely brain dead, that there was no activity whatsoever in his brain, um,
Oh my
and that
gosh.
they didn't know, like, from the damage that had been done, that he would ever be able to walk, talk, breathe on his own, anything. And they said that if he survives. And so at that point, like, we just were begging and pleading to the Lord to guide us and to give us a miracle. And so over the next few days, they basically the only thing that they can do is obviously keep him comfortable and to begin weaning those settings to see what Benny can show us and what Benny can do. And they just kept saying, like, this is up to Benny. Like, this is all up to Benny. And over those next few days, and they started changing and adjusting the settings slowly on his like EEG as they started like releasing some of those medications that were heavily sedating him. There would be little baby ticks in his EEG. And I would like look at the doctor and they would say, no. And I'm like, yes, like there's activity that I'm seeing that I was not seeing. Like,
Mhm.
and
Were you just there, like, nonstop?
my husband and I never once left the hospital. We stayed in his room in a like I made the little like couch into a bed
Mhm.
and we got a cot for my husband to sleep on and we never left the hospital. So over the next few days, like he would start initiating a few breaths over the ventilator settings. And then there would be times that he wasn't trying at all. And so it would be like little inches, little inklings of hope that we would continue to get. And he they would then he would have a seizure and then they would kind of have to kind of reel back and then he then I asked them at one point, I can't remember exactly how many days in we were, but I'm like, how many days can he go without food?
Mhm.
And they ended up that same day putting like a NG tube in his nose so that we could start working on food. Obviously, he was getting fluids and things like that, but like, as a mom, he's a new little baby, and how long can he go without having food?
Mhm.
And so over those next few days, he like just miracles upon miracles started to unfold. He started initiating more breaths and um whenever you're in the PICU, you have one nurse that is delegated to your room and no one ever leaves your room. Like if a nurse needs to go get meds or something, she has someone else come in or someone brings them to her. So there's someone with them 24/7. And like, you know, we're seeing all these great things happen and then one night we have two nurses come in and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, why are there two nurses? Like this means something bad." Like, and so basically it was not anything bad. It was that Benny was stable enough that they felt like they could add a trainee with this other nurse. So obviously she was going to be a little bit more distracted by training and educating her on Benny and like those types of things. So at first I was like, this can't be good. But it
Mhm.
was, just continued to see like miracles upon miracles. Um, and they ended up taking him off of the ventilator. And the first time they took him off, he was able to go onto BiPAP and did just fine.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and then he went to high flow. His lungs and his heart and everything have always been great ever since everything happened. And obviously prior to. And so he was breathing on his own. And that was like our first hurdle that we had to, and then, doctors still were really unsure about like what was going to be Benny's outcome. And obviously, they like had said that he had a hypoxic brain injury and that he had damage to his entire brain. Sometimes it can just be for kiddos like on one side or the other. That his was, he might not be able to see, that he might not be able to walk, he might not be able to talk. We were really unsure of all of that. And so were the doctors. That was something that they like couldn't tell us. And they just kept telling us like, this is just up to Benny. We'll have to wait and see what Benny does. And so after that, we got moved out of the ICU, the PICU, and got moved to a regular floor. And
And
once
how
we got,
long after Like, how long
It
did that
was
take?
so amazingly enough, it was only 14 days.
Wow. So he
Yeah,
made improvements fast,
very fast.
and
So whenever we
obviously improvements you wanted to see because,
Yes,
I
absolutely,
mean,
and he knew like I said, the moment that I saw him, I knew that he was never going to be the same, and what that looked like, we didn't know, but I will never be able to explain, and many people can understand, and then many people won't be able to understand until they go through something like this or, some sort of major life change. Like, how the Lord moved for us in those moments. Like, my husband and I were people that never really attended Sunday church. Our families didn't necessarily attend Sunday church. We obviously were very Christ driven, prayed for others, and like believed in the Lord. But until those moments and until we were in the trenches, we didn't realize like what God can do for you and what God can do for people and what miracles are. And that was something that led us into our faith and everything. And without all the people praying for us and everyone in our community, like I truly believe that we might be in a different place,
wow.
mentally, physically, and also where Benny's at too. Uh,
Mhm.
so once we got into a regular room, it was really nice because we had like a bathroom in our room and we had a shower in there because before we would have to go like down the halls to take showers or go to the bathroom and everything. There was nothing like that in the ICU. So that was a little bit better. And it was also better because we could bring our girls to see us there. So for the first 7 days that we were in the ICU, both of my parents and both of my husband's parents stayed at the hospital with us the entire time. We were able to get a Ronald McDonald Place, and all four of them stayed in the same room together. And my
Wow.
brother and his kids and my grandma took care of our girls here because our parents couldn't leave us, and they didn't want to leave us. And um, until they knew like a little bit better, like we could walk out of the hospital and go get, whatever the case might be, they weren't going to leave us. And so luckily my brother and his kids and my grandma stayed here at our house with the girls for that first 7 days. And then after that, our parents were able to bring them up, or the first 14. Then after that, our parents were able to like bring them up to see us. And I'll never forget whenever they saw him, he was off the ventilator, and I was so disheartened because he had not had a seizure, and so they told us that they were gonna take the EEG leads off, and, for a 2 and 4-year-old at that time, like, that's very scary to see their brother with all of that.
Mhm.
Um, and so luckily he was no longer intubated, he was on oxygen, but they ended up having to put the leads on because of some of the eye movements that he was doing. And so whenever they got there, obviously that's what they saw him like. Um, and they were very scared to see him and had a lot of questions and wanted to know like when we were coming home and when Bubby would be better. And I described it to the girls like Benny had a boo boo in his brain. And we were just waiting for the doctors to let us know that he was safe to go home.
Mhm.
And still to this day, I described it in the worst way to them because they ask at least twice a week, like when Benny's boo boo is going to get better, because typical boo boos do get better.
Mhm.
And so I'm
That's
like,
so hard because
yeah,
how do you know how to describe that to your
I
daughters?
know. And they understood it that way, but they don't understand why it's not getting better.
Yeah.
And so that was really hard. We didn't describe it in the most explanatory way for them to understand, but it was an easy enough way for them to be okay with it and not have a ton more questions, which was easy for us to move, whenever they asked more questions, it just like we would look at each other like, what are we supposed to say? Like, how are we supposed to respond? Because we didn't want them to feel scared or unsafe or unsure. We wanted them to live in the dark a little bit about it at that time,
Mhm.
because it was easier for us, easier for them. I don't know, I felt like less was more,
Yeah,
you know?
I would not know how to handle it. I mean,
Yeah,
as you're
and, like
describing it now, I'm like, I mean, how are they handling it now? Is it still they ask a lot of questions and they're still kind of not understanding?
yeah, so it's really interesting. So with Benny's injury, and everyone that began praying for us, they um came up with like a saying, believe in Benny, and bumblebees became like a or like a huge thing for us. Like I have them all in our house now. Benny has tons of bumblebees. The girls love bumblebees. And I felt like it was like spring and summer when kind of this occurred. And so like everyone was all about bumblebees. And so now we have tons of bumblebees. And just recently, like Charlie got to bring 4 things in a bag to like describe her family and life for like show and tell. And she put like one of the bumblebees in there.
Oh.
So they have a lot of questions still about, like, is will Benny be able to play with them? Or, we go to the mall sometimes, and our mall has, like, a wishing well, you can throw pennies in it, and Charlie always says that she wants Benny to be able to play with her or hang out in her playroom with her or eat with her. Um, so those are all things that she says, and every night she wants to pray for Benny to be able to do different things with her, like, um, and now they're getting to like, to the understanding that if we go and do things and, like, a lot of times they'd be like, "Well, why isn't Benny going? Why can't Benny go?" And oftentimes we do that because we want to just keep him safe, um, because we are in a small community and have a lot of people that want to come up and see us and say hi and see how we're doing. And we just don't want a lot of exposure to him because he is
Mhm.
so still fragile, I guess, like,
Yeah, like his
really.
immunity and
Yeah,
everything
I
like
mean,
that.
we're just now to the point where I feel like our head is a little bit above water. The last thing we need is for him to get, like, an illness or sickness or, for us to bring something home to him is even, but at the end of the day, we do know that we have to live and we have to do normal things as a family, and so we've started to do some of those things, you know, lately, and the girls are understanding, like, "Oh, Benny can't come this time," or "Benny gets to go this time," and they're really excited.
Mhm.
Um, or they love whenever I pick them up and Benny's in the car. Sometimes we have a nurse, and so, like, the nurse will be at our house with him. And then at the beginning, they always wondered why we had nurses in our home, like, why mommy couldn't always take care of Benny, um, or why my husband obviously is gone at work during the day. Um, and now they, like, love our nurses, like, they're the first people they wanna see whenever they wake up in the mornings, like, before
Yeah,
my
like
husband and I.
they're a part of your family. So do the nurses stay at your house?
No, so we really just have day nurses,
Okay,
but they come on at 6 a.m. so that it allows me to be able to, like, get my girls ready and, like, do our
yep,
morning routine and all of that, um, without having to also do all of Benny's care. Um,
definitely.
so in the mornings, like, he has, like, early morning meds and feeds and all of that, and he's prone to vomiting, and so, like, I can't just, like, walk out of the room and go give a bath to one of the girls without leaving, so
Mhm.
nice to have them, and it's nice to
Oh,
not have
yeah,
to.
that's a blessing
Yes.
because, although you want to be there for him 24/7, it's unfair to also not be able to have that, have your child, your motherhood with with your daughters.
Right.
Um, and, I'm sure it's been a big shift for them with
Yeah.
all of this happening. Like you said, you guys were at the hospital for a while and then the transition to bringing Benny home and just everything.
Yes.
That's a big change for them.
Yeah, definitely. And they've done well, like, much better than I anticipated. You as a mom, you always worry, and then you always worry that, like, we're not doing enough because we're spending more time with Benny, or sometimes Benny would require my husband and I both, and that we were, like, leaving our kid girls out. And
Yeah.
now that we're over a year into it, we know that they have like gained grit and grace and patience um through this, and hopefully that like carries over with them in school with caring for other children and things like that. So we are thankful that they have learned those skills because it's made things a lot easier now that we are home.
Definitely. How long so it was about a year or it was a little over a year ago?
Yeah.
How long did it take for Benny to transition to being home? And I know there's a process there, right? Because you had
Yeah.
to learn how to do his medical, his medications, how to care for him. There's all these things that you have to complete
Yes.
before he can come home, right?
Yes. So, with my education background as an elementary autism teacher, so I was kind of familiar with G-tube feeds and familiar with some of the like terminology and different things like that. So I felt like they kind of threw us to the wolves a little bit sooner than others. Um,
Mhm.
because I acted like I knew what I was doing, but then once we
Yeah.
got it was much different. So I think I'm just a very, like, type A person. I'm like, "Let me do it. I wanna do it. I wanna know how to do it." So, whenever they would be doing meds, I would ask 50 questions, and I wanted to do it, and I wanted to know, like, how quick to push the med and all of those types of things. And so, we were home within a month from his injury.
Wow. That's fast.
And then when we got home, we were life flighted back 3 additional times after for just, like, not tolerating feeds, like, just he got like a little like rhinovirus, but it was like soon after his injury. And um so we were life flighted back like 3 different times. And I'm like, oh my goodness, is this going to be our life to like be home for a little bit and just breathe? And then like we're right back there. And
Mhm.
um so luckily since then, our last like hospital, ER visit was last week. So we were blessed by so many miracles so quickly. And once we got home, I remember saying to my husband, I think I would rather be back in the hospital. Like, this is so hard. Like, you have an IV pole that you're wheeling around your house, and you have toddlers that are wanting to run around and play. And I felt like we were getting onto them. Like, you have to be careful. You're going to trip over this. And you're going to pull this out of Benny's nose, because at this point he just had an NG tube. They were having us come back to get his G tube. And then we had like all this medical supplies all over our kitchen counter when, typically that's not on people's counters. And
Mhm.
we had just transitioned him before to his crib. And so I'm like, well, he's got to sleep in our room. So then we're trying to, you know, get our crib out of his bedroom and move it back into our bedroom. And, just so many things that were what were normal were no longer normal, but had to become our new normal.
Mhm.
Was the hardest thing, was like finding that. Like, at the very beginning, Benny had really bad neurostorming, and it was hard because up until the day we left the hospital, he never made a peep. He never cried. He never whined. He just was never made any noises. And so we just thought maybe this is what is going to be a Benny. And as soon as the nurses left the car when they were saying bye to us, he started crying. Like, as soon as and he cried the entire way home from the hospital, and I'm like, "What are we going to do?" Like, I can't get him out of the car seat, like, you know, we're trying to just like, we just gotta get home, like. And so then when we got home is whenever he started really experiencing the neurostorming really bad, and he would hold his breath for an extended period of time to the point that we were afraid that he was going to pass out, and then he would start crying again. It was like he wasn't able to regulate. And so part of the storming was just like touch. So transitions. So if I was holding him, transitioning him to my husband so I could go to the bathroom, or laying him down to do a diaper change, would cause him to storm. And so he would cry and he would hold his breath, and then never did he ever pass out from doing that, but it was part of regulating it. He was like, he like would like when a kid's really upset crying, he couldn't like regulate to keep crying. It was like his body was just so overstimulated by the touch, the sensation, all of that from the fight or flight going on in his brain at that time.
Wow, which makes sense then when you guys put him in the car, because that's a very different
Yeah, like the
situation,
position too, because
experience.
yeah, he is very, very stiff. So like since he's been diagnosed with cerebral palsy and dystonia, and spasticity, so very stiff. And so like getting him bent in that position was really hard for him. It wasn't comfortable. Like he prefers to be an extension. And so a lot of those things came once we got home. It was like we didn't really experience a lot of that at the hospital. And so one of the times we were life flighted because of that, because we were like, we don't know what to do. Like, how do we make him comfortable? Like, we can't
Mhm.
stop crying. Um, and everyone, like, whenever I would like update, every few days or whatever, because so many people were invested, and honestly, at that time, it was therapeutic for me because I was able to write down what I was feeling and what we were visually seeing. And then my husband was like the like rereader and like make it like sound better type of person. So then he got to add his flair to it and his feelings and emotion. And it was therapeutic for us because we didn't sit and talk about it because we didn't want to talk about what we were going through. And that was just part of our like grieving process, I think. But when we did write and tell people, then we were able to like verbalize those emotions and kind of let that release. And I think that was helpful to us because
Mhm.
we didn't bottle all of that up in a sense.
Definitely.
And so, um, yeah, once we were home, home was just really hard at the beginning. So we went back, and then that's whenever we started adding in some other medications for like comfort, for the neuro irritability and the neurostorming. And everyone just kept telling me that has been through a similar experience, other medical moms, that it will get better. And all I kept saying to them is, it can't get worse. Like it can't. Like the storming was like, I remember it would keep us up all night. We would not sleep for days. And then finally, we had a nurse reach out to us that wanted to do nights for us. And I'm like, has she lost her mind? Somebody, like some nurses like to do nights, but she was a grandma and retired, but she recently retired as like a director of nursing. And I'm like, does she really? And, she's actually a nurse that is still with us today and is now doing days, but she had a son that was autistic and she had 2 other children as well. And so she remembered how hard the beginning of their journey was, and that sleep was the most important thing that they needed. And so she came on and did 2 nights a week, and then I would do 2 nights a week, and then my husband did 2 nights a week, and then my mother-in-law did 1 night a week because it was an
'Cause
all
you have
night.
to stay up with them, right? Someone needs to be
We
up.
didn't necessarily have to stay up with him,
Okay.
like, it was just because, like, he was just up because he was so uncomfortable, and he was crying a lot and storming, um, that we weren't gonna sleep anyways.
Yeah.
There would be times that he would fall asleep, but it would be, like, very short-lived. Um, and so over time, that has gotten much better, and he's able to regulate much better. Um, like, we just did a intensive in Indiana, about a month ago, and before we went to Indiana, he still, like, would cry and hold his breath anytime we ever gave him a bath. And since we've gotten back from Indiana, his bath time is, like, so much better. Like, I thought we would never ever be able to put him in water, like a pool or anything like that again. And it
And is it
slowly
like a therapy to help him? Is that what it was in Indiana?
yeah, so it's, like intensive OT and PT.
Okay.
So it was like 2 hours of therapy a day for 2 solid weeks. And so they say with like intensive therapy, what you can accomplish in intensive therapy is what you can typically accomplish in like 6 months of like your weekly therapy that you do. So we have done two intensives with Benny so far since his injury. We did one in January in Denver, and then we just did this last one in Indiana. And they have been a game changer for us. And they also are very like home centered. So they have taught my husband and I a lot about how we can help Benny at home. And it's also just been so helpful for our mental health because we've learned that we are not alone in this journey.
Mhm.
And there's many other people out there that are like us. You
Yeah.
know,
Have you been able to connect with more medical parents, and have you met other people who have had a very similar story to Benny's?
yeah. So that's something that we talk about often is that I've met a ton of moms that I can connect with and that I talk with on a daily basis. Like we text each other just about the different things that our kiddos are doing now. And on the hard days, we can help lift each other up too, because my hard days are typically different than their hard days. And it's been interesting because a lot of the families that we've talked to, their injuries are from birth, from
Uh-huh.
delivery, and or their child had like it was more of a shaking baby syndrome from daycare.
Mm.
Um, I haven't really met any mom that has, like, experienced something close to what we have, yet, but I'm sure over time I will. But the moms that I've been able to connect with have been, like, my saving grace, and at the very beginning, right out of the gate, we had people reaching out to us while we were still in the hospital. And now to this day, like I have met a couple moms that are like recently newly going through this from their delivery. And although I didn't go through this at the very beginning, I remember what those beginning moments were like. And the beginning is so hard. It's so hard and it's so dark and it's so lonely. And um I feel like I've been able to help them understand that they aren't alone and that they are going to be okay.
Mhm.
Because in those moments, you don't think that you're gonna make it another day.
Yeah, I just feel like you're adrenaline. Like you're running
Yeah,
on adrenaline and faith. Like,
yes, literally. Like, whenever we think back to some like, sleeping on that cot for, like, a month and, like, all of those types of things, it's like, I don't know how we did that. And I'll never forget when like, the day after we got from the hospital, like, obviously, people knew there was a prayer night for us in our hometown. And, a pastor had brought in a trailer and, like, the people were, like, doing food to, like, give back to Benny, and our family, and we got released from the hospital that day. And so I'll never forget, there was a song that they texted me and said was our song for Benny, and it's, a song by Charity Gale, "We Need a Miracle." And I'll never forget that I texted my mom and said, "We're pulling through Girard right now, we're gonna drive by the event." And they were playing that song when we drove by, and everyone was just like their hands were up and they were all praying for us, and still to this day, my daughter will ask me if she sees me crying, if they're happy tears or sad tears, because
oh.
she was like, "So many people were crying and I didn't know why." And I was like, "Well, they were so happy, babe, that we were coming home from the hospital." Um, and it was just like we got released that day and we're coming home at that time when
Yeah,
the event was occurring. So all of those moments were really special to us and just like helped lead us into our faith even deeper.
definitely. Um, what what do things look like for Benny right now? Like what are you working on? What are doctors saying? Like obviously he's in a totally different place than they thought. I mean, they didn't even think he would make it. So, what is like the hope for the future for Benny?
So we actually get to see his neurologist here in a few weeks, and I can't wait to see like the look on his face when he sees Benny. Because I truly think in the last, like, 6 months, and we do EEGs, like, every 3 months, but we only see the doctor every 6 months is kind of how that works, unless there's, like, something that has come up, um, that he's going to be, like, taken back. So I'm gonna try and record it.
Yeah, definitely
Um,
do.
but so Benny is really every time someone asks me 6 months ago, I would say we're doing okay. And at this point, whenever people ask me, I say that we're doing good because Benny really is doing great. He is tracking with his eyes now. He is able to turn his head from side to side. If like I'm over here and I'm saying something to him or he wants to look, he can. He has been diagnosed with cortical visual impairment. So it's not that he doesn't have good vision, it's the processing from the brain to the eye is delayed. And so he is wearing special glasses now that are helping him to be able to focus and kind of see a little bit better. And I feel like with that, he's able to kind of focus on faces and differentiation a little bit better.
Mhm.
Obviously, he knows voices, and I've always thought that he knew like who I was. Um, and he we are working on him setting, he's fully G-tube dependent right now, and we're working on him to take bites, and he will take a few bites in a sitting, but not using those muscles for a year, they're very weak, and so my hope is to just continue to grow those muscles and to not lose that skill, because oftentimes kiddos can create aversions to things being in their mouth or around their mouth, and that's my hope,
Mhm.
isn't necessarily for him to like, my first step for him wouldn't be to, like, eat food fully or to not like, to even eliminate a meal, but to just not lose those skills.
Yeah.
Uh, and we're working on him to be able to sit, and we have a stander for him to work on standing. So with all of Benny's muscle tone, he both of his hips are dislocated at this time. We see the doctor in October about that. And the next steps for that would either be surgery or we can try Botox in the muscle, that can hopefully help relax those muscles to help put them back into the socket. But um, eventually, at some point in life, Benny will probably have to have surgery to release those tendons from just all the muscle tone that he has. Um, but my hope is that with us continuing therapy and doing the intensives regularly, that we can prolong that as long as possible. Um, because we know that once we start doing things like that, from what we've learned from all of our therapists and all the other parents that have gone through things like this, is it's always a temporary fix and it isn't a forever fix. So if we start doing surgery at 2 years of age, it's something that we're going to continue to have to do. So my hope is that we can prolong that as long as possible.
Yeah, definitely. But I just in my mind as I'm like, "He's here." Like, all I keep saying to myself is like, "He's here," which is, like, such a beautiful, like, miracle. Um you're good. Um, as far as, like, for you and your husband, like, have you had a second to take for yourself or take together as a team since this has occurred?
So it's been really hard. So, like I said, I closed my storefront so that I could stay home. And then obviously we have the nurses so that those days I can work from home. Um, but our parents have allowed us to, they'll come over and let us go get dinner and have moments to ourselves, or go get my hair done because, as we all know, as moms, like that makes you feel better.
Mhm.
Um, and my husband now is doing like golf league again on Wednesdays. And my mother-in-law or my parents will come over and like spend the evening with us because evenings are the hardest for Benny. Like, just he is a one person job and requires all of you, with doing meds and getting him ready for bed and finishing up his feed and everything. But our kiddos also deserve someone to like love and be fully there for them. And sometimes, like, after a full day or a hard day with Benny, like, it's hard to give that extra. And so, something that has been important for my husband and I is to communicate because typically, I think I said it earlier too, like, my hard days are typically different than his, and sometimes you just wake up and it's like you dreamed about things or you had thoughts all night and it was hard to sleep and it's just a hard day.
Mhm.
The grieving hit you when you woke up or something, and so we've just really been diligent about communicating and then picking up the slack. And I think that's something that is really important with medical parents is to communicate, um, because that's the only way that you're going to get through, is communicating. Parents in general is
Yeah.
communicating because as a parent in general, there's hard days. But whenever we have typical kids that demand our needs and then a medical kid that demands a lot of needs, it definitely throws wrenches.
Mhm. Definitely. And then I know you mentioned um your church and how you guys really went rooted in like you always had your faith, but now you're like really rooted. Do you guys attend your church regularly and um also like community? The Believe in Benny, is that something that's like in your community?
Yes. So for the church, we actually decided that we wanted to become a part of the Catholic Church here in our community. And so in September of last year, we had one evening a week that we would have to spend an hour away, and our family helped make that happen so that we could. And I always thought whenever I would go, like I would feel so guilty and like unable to go because we were newly home from the hospital. And every time we went, I felt so fine with being there. Like, it didn't bother me, I didn't have the anxiety like I thought that I would. I felt at peace being there, and so that was crazy because if I would leave to, like, go get a coffee or something, I would have anxiety the whole time I was gone.
Mhm.
Um, but so we became members of the Catholic Church, and all of our whole family was baptized on Easter Sunday this year, even Benny,
No.
and the girls too, and, I always thought that our kids would attend, like, the school that I went to growing up, and they are actually going to the Catholic school. So, Charlie's in kindergarten there, and then Clara's doing the three-year-old preschool there as well. So, life kind of changed there. Um,
Yeah.
we are forever thankful for that, and, we always said that, like, that was one beautiful good thing that came out of what happened with us. And I think it's always important to find the good in every incident or everything that does happen because if not,
Mhm.
you just constantly eat yourself up. And
Definitely.
then for community, so we have a Facebook page. It's called Believe in Benny. And I try to post like weekly updates in there, kind of just filling people in on what's going on or how to pray for us or what's kind of coming up for Benny with intensives. And we've been doing hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment with him. And we're working with our doctor on getting one at home, filling them in on our chiropractor. We do weekly chiropractic. So as soon as we got home from the hospital, we had a chiropractor reach out to us locally that wanted to come see Benny, and he was willing to come to our house, um, and sort of come to
Wow.
our house daily. And then for a long time at the very beginning, I took Benny to see him twice a day, every day, Monday through Friday. And then now we're kind of to where we go twice a week, 2 times a day on his therapy days, and then the other days we just go once a day. So that has been a blessing to us, and his family has been amazing to us as well. And he actually recently ordered a hyperbaric and is getting one in his practice as well. And that's something that we've seen great strides with Benny with his healing. Um, and just the community support has been unmatched. Like the coffee shop did like uh, a give back day to Benny, and the girls still call it Benny's Place, even though it's 7 Brew Coffee.
Oh.
But the girls will say, "I want to go to Benny's Place and get a smoothie,"
Oh.
often, or if they see it, they'll call it Benny's Place, because they remember that day, like, being such a special day for us and our family, and, there were so many businesses and people in our community that did amazing things for us and our family and have helped us through, like, at the beginning, we had recently built a house a couple years ago before I even got pregnant with Benny, and, obviously, a mortgage is expensive, and we were, like, when my husband doesn't work, he doesn't make money, and my business I was trying to sell off at the time because I didn't know if I was gonna open at all or do online. So everything was 50 to 70% off, so there was no profit. It was just I was able to pay my employees that were still operating the store for me while I was in the hospital, and so if it wouldn't have been for our community, like, I don't know what, they helped us to pay our bills during those first few months and help us pay for his medical intensives because they're very expensive and aren't covered by insurance. And um, yeah, community has been amazing for us. Like, still to this day, I'm in awe all the time. I look back and I've kept every single card that everyone has sent us. And I've had to get a container because the baggie that I was using wasn't working anymore. And um, so, yeah, community has been huge for us.
That's really special. I feel like, I can't say that, I just don't know that you would always get that response depending, where you are. So it's really, you have an amazing community. How do you handle or how, that anxiety that you said that you would feel when you'd go get coffee? How have you been trying to manage that? Because obviously, as a mom, I know, I mean, if our babies are sick, that's just that weighs on you. So, how have you found a way to cope
Yeah.
with that anxiety?
So I will say, and this might just help other moms too. At the very beginning, I was like, I do not need to get on any medication for what we're going through. I need to feel these emotions. I need to live through these emotions. I need to talk about these emotions and I need to push through them. And I'll never forget whenever I was in Denver at one of Benny's intensives, we were away from home for 3 weeks, almost like an additional hospital stay, but we weren't in a hospital. We were doing like hard work for Benny. It was hard on him. It was hard on us, seeing him go through that. But we also knew it was good for him. And I remember calling my doctor, like, I'm going to end up in a mental hospital if I don't do something, like, because it was just I felt like the weight of the world was crashing in on me. And, um, that has been something that, like, me openly expressing that, like, medication has been something that has helped me, um,
Mhm.
with just the day to day, and I didn't want something that made me feel like the first medication I took, I felt like I was sitting in the backseat of the car, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
I don't like to feel like this, but I just need something to, like, help take that edge off and just know, like, everything is gonna be okay, and, like, I need to give it to God, and, praying has helped me a ton, and just trying to push it off onto the Lord and explain it to the Lord and tell him how I'm feeling has helped give me grace, and it's also helped give me that positive affirmation that I needed,
Yep.
um, to know that I can't be everything all the time and that everything isn't going to be perfect and everything is going to be okay. Um,
Mhm.
and so that has been something that has helped me because it's hard as a parent and especially trying to work, and my life was changing so much on the business aspect, also on the parental aspect too. So it was very heavy at the beginning. And I remember saying to my husband, like, not only has our life changed with Benny, but like my entire like business that I dreamed up and everything is like, you know, done, and it was
Mhm.
done and it's still not done. But it was just changing. And that's hard. Like, just like I know, if you're a parent and you lose a job and have to find another job, like that's what it felt like. It felt like
Mhm.
not only a loss with everything with Benny, but like a loss with my job. And that was hard at the beginning.
Yeah. No, I can only imagine. I mean, you're doing your best, and it just really seems like there's so many blessings, um, and just the change in a good direction in a year has been, like,
Absolutely.
major strides. Um, for, you know, for the parents who are listening and maybe, you know, they're going through a similar experience and they're new to it, or just parents that need to hear, more about this message, like, what do you want them to know about Benny's story? Like, what do you wanna share?
Yeah. So for parents that are listening, like something that was big for my husband and I is that we had to work as a team. And so communication was key and is key for your relationship easy days, hard days all the time, and to just feel those emotions and communicate them. So, whether you're going through something like just it's hard becoming a parent and feeling like you lost your relationship, but communicating like, "Hey, I would really like to watch a movie with you tonight," or "Hey, I really need help with putting the kids to bed tonight because I am really zapped." Um, Being able to communicate, I think, is key. And then also just knowing that you're not alone, leaning on your support system, whether that's family, friends, whoever, asking for help. That is something that was really hard for me, but asking for help was something that I had to learn to do because I couldn't do it on my own.
Mhm.
Um, and my husband and I say I, but we couldn't do it on our own. We had to have that family support, and friends, whether that's a cooked meal or an hour away or to go pick up your groceries from Walmart pickup or whatever the case might be. It's always good to ask for help too.
Yeah. And then parents just need to do their research, I guess, more heavily on the daycare.
So on the daycare side of things, um, it's really important to ask questions. So the family that we went to, we fully trusted. They were a big part of our family, and we would have never thought that they would do anything to harm our child. But I feel like in my heart, if they understood the law and had a license, that some of this might not have happened. And as a parent, ultimately, it's our due diligence to check into that, just like when you're doing your research for someone that does hair, um, to make sure that they do the styles that you want or whatever. But as a parent, to really make sure that they are licensed and to do your research and maybe ask other parents that that if their kids have gone there or ask for references, make sure that they have up to date CPR certification because you never know what could happen. And
Mm-mm.
that is your baby. And I'll always say, I can make choices for my child, but they should never make choices beyond the law for my child.
Definitely.
Never.
Um, well, as far as Believe in Benny, I would love to have I'll attach, like, a link,
Yeah.
when we
Love
post the episode because I would love to be able to follow along, and you said that's mainly on Facebook, right?
Yes. So, we created a group on Facebook, and so it's mostly been on there. I do post a lot of like reels and things like that of our like day to day journey and just like our adventures with Benny on my personal Instagram as well. But most of our stuff is posted in his group on Facebook.
Okay, well, I'll make sure to attach that, and, I just thank you so much for coming on and for
Yes,
telling Benny's story, for telling your family's story. Um, it's a tragedy that is turning into a miracle, and to have him here is just beyond, it's God's work.
absolutely. And that's
Well,
the only other way that I can put it.
yeah,
When people say, I'm like, I have no words, other
no,
than a miracle. Like he's our little miracle.
yeah, he really is. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you
and
so
we will
much.
definitely be following along on Benny's journey as he continues to just make further strides.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.